It's going to be my adaptation of King Lear, which I might call a King Lear remix. Some people wouldn't call it that, obviously not the cameraman, but you know, I like to call it that. So, a lot of people like to tell stories with books, movies, you know, fashion, I don't know. But I like to tell them with cards. And the thing is, this kind of gives a nice little variation to some old stories. But this story, to tell you it, I need to give you a little bit of background knowledge. Alright, the first little piece, is that the main character, King Lear, he wanted to do something a little bit strange for kings back then. He wanted to retire. Now, he was a king a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, known as England. And retiring back then from the kingship was a little off. But you know, it's definitely not as prominent as today, because some people like to retire really young, especially like I don't know, maybe scholars like English teachers, so they don't have to give their students exams. I'm just kidding. I love you, Dr. Morris. I'm jesting. Okay. So anyway, he wanted to divide his land between his 3 daughters. All right. The first one was Goneril, with her husband, the Duke of Albany. The second was Regan, with her husband, the Duke of Cornwall. But the third was definitely his favorite, and she loved him most, Cordelia. Now, Cordelia usually, did everything he wanted, but today was a little bit different. Today he had called everyone together because he wanted to find her a husband. Now, there were 2 main suitors, but before I get to that, I gotta tell you something strange he did today. He wanted to retire, so he decided to divide his land up, but to do this, to kind of make it even, he wanted to see how much his daughters loved him. So what he did, he asked each of them to tell him how much they loved him. And in turn, they each did so. So the first, instead of speaking the truth, spoke false love, and was given 1/3 of the land. The second, also without much incentive to tell the truth because she wasn't his favorite, also spoke false love and was given 1/3 in turn. But Cordelia, being an honest person, really truly loving her father, spoke the truth by saying nothing. Alright, now, because of this, her third, which was probably the best third, was torn into 2. And given the other 2, I mean, she was, whatever. And at this point, she was also banished. Now, because of this, she had also lost her dowry, which made it a little bit difficult when you're about to get married. But the thing was, when this all happened, I mean, King Lear just banished his favorite daughter, and a lot of people thought that, he might have been going loco. Because the thing was, you couldn't tell the king that he was going crazy. Because, you just can't do it. But, this one guy, his name was the Lord of Kent. He came up to Lear, he was one of his most trusted advisors, and he said, Lear, you're going a bit wacko, you just banished your favorite daughter. And for this, telling the truth, he was also banished. Now, this is kind of a weird thing, but Lord of Kent, he was probably, very loyal servant, he loved his king, and he didn't want to see him, being taken advantage of by his 2 daughters who didn't really love him. And just like that, he decided to change and disguise himself. Right? So, because of this, he was obviously able to keep close to him, but now we move on to the other story. We've got the suitors. Now, to Cordelia, there were 2 suitors. The first one was the Duke of Burgundy. Now, he was in it for the money, the wealth, if you will. And when he found out that she had lost her dowry, wasn't that eager to take her. So he decided to let the King of France, with his love, take her. Now, so she moves off to France with the King of France. Now, at this point we move to sort of a side plot. It's a side plot of the Earl of Gloucester, right? The Earl of Gloucester had 2 sons, just like King Lear had 3 daughters. One son, named Edmund, his bastard child, didn't really love him. He honestly despised him because he put Edmund at a lower level than his other son, who truly did love him, Edgar. Now, Edmund, being a cunning person, he used deceit to make his father see Edgar in a pretty bad light, and he turned him into a fugitive. But the thing was, with Edgar, we had something a little bit strange going on, right? We had a person who was banished after living this great thing, but he wanted to, keep his life, obviously. So what he did, he decided to change, just like that, into his creation, Poor Tom. Right, now, at this point, we saw Poor Tom, and we noticed that something kind of weird had happened at Gloucester. He was blind to what was happening, even though he was seeing. Now, this is going to be sort of a theme throughout the story, and the same happens with the Lear. But we go a little bit further. We've got the king's two demands of his daughters. He wants to retain the title of king. This is King Lear. He wants to retain the title of king, but he also wants to keep 100 men as his personal, guides. Now, he'd also said that he would, travel back and forth between Goneril and Regan's castles and live with them. And when he comes with 100 men, they start being a little bit rowdy, and, Regan and Goneril both say, well, why didn't he even need 50 men? What needs you 50? I mean, we've got servants that can serve you, and he was outraged. He had, it was a clear-cut contract. And he said, no, I want my 100 men. So they said, well, what needs you 5 and 20? He, still outraged, said, no. What needs you 10, or 5, or even 1? Now, at this point, what might happen to some people, they go just a little crazy. And at this point, he runs out. And it's kind of a bad idea. He runs out into the middle of a storm that is not on the floor. And he runs out into the middle of the storm, but with a kind of curious character. He runs out with the Fool. And it's, his jester, basically. And, see, the thing is, the fools in Shakespeare usually aren't very foolish. They're usually pretty wise, pretty sagacious, whatever. And this fool is pretty much the same, because he shows King Lear that Lear is also a fool, and only a shadow of its former self. Now, at this point, King Lear, his eyes are open. Because obviously before, just like Gloucester, he was blind while seeing to what has happened. He realizes that he's banished his favorite daughter. I mean, it's pretty bad. But we go back, and we find Gloucester has also been blinded after he was attacked. And, right when he loses his sight, he loses both of his eyes, and suddenly it dawns on him. Wait a minute. I just banished my favorite son, so his eyes also are opened. In a more figurative sense. And then, we have a little bit something strange going on. To come back and claim her father, we've got Queen of France, Cordelia. Comes back, wants to claim her father, and she and her father are reunited. Also, Edgar and Gloucester reunited. As would happen in a lot of Shakespeare's plays, tragedy strikes. And Regan, Goneril, Cordelia, and a lot of people are all killed, including Gloucester, who just dies. But at this point, seeing his daughter, Cordelia especially, being killed at the hands of Edmund, his heart breaks, and he dies. But the point of the story is that, sometimes you can see, at least think you see everything, but really, be completely blind to what's going on. So you think you know what's going on, until, just like that, something changes just a little bit. Just a little bit. Right? So at this point, you think you see everything. The truth is, you're not seeing the whole truth. You're just seeing a little portion of it. Alright? Now, some crazy things go on when you think you're seeing you're blind. Put that down, and you still think you're seeing, but the problem is you're still just blind. I mean, you go even further. You can take that one truth and see it might be just a lie. And that